So this stuff is Marmeline engineered stone, similar to quartz. It's an 18 by 48 slab. You can get it for about $200 from a box store. Not too bad. You can make one full bench of this design out of one slab. Now you can see I'm just using the predetermined corner, so I'm getting 18 inches of depth on the bench itself. Makes it about 24 across. You need to use opposing corners when you're marking these out, because that little strip that I'm showing there, that's going to be your front. So mark both angles out, opposing corners, and then you're going to leave some of that stock there for your front. Look, I've talked about this before. The safety aspect of cutting this engineered stone, critical. This stuff will kill you, all right? If you're exposed to it one time, you breathe it one time, no big deal. But if you're doing this on a regular basis, even semi-regular basis, dude, strap up, wear the appropriate gear, or use tools to mitigate the dust entirely. Now, I'm cutting it by hand. I've built jigs to cut them on the table saw. Cutting it by hand, I can cut it pretty straight, so I'm just cutting it by hand because it's faster. It's less tool setup, really. The good thing is, though, is that once these are cut, we got the tools to clean that straight edge up. That's a Calidad flap wheel. It eats material pretty quickly, especially this engineered stone, so as long as you've got a good guideline there, you can hone that thing down to a perfectly straight edge. This blade, I'm going to use it to cut the miter on the outside of that bench. This blade is the Roma blade from Calidad. Probably the best blade that they have, to be honest with you. I love it. Notice when I'm cutting there, I'm cutting the miter by hand. There's not really a gauge, right, for the 45. But remember, you don't want a true 45 on this. You want it back cut a little further. You want it more like a 50 degree. What that's going to do is that's going to give you a little more play when you're putting this thing together. It's going to give you space for the epoxy to fill. And quite frankly, if you have perfect 45, it's going to be hard to actually put together, and you're going to end up splaying that miter open just a little bit if you do that, because all of the surfaces of the material will be touching. So you want to back cut that just a little bit. Again, you're going to grab the other piece, do the same exact thing, back cut it a little more than 45. Now, this is 2-inch Kerdi board. It's what I use for the structure of the bench itself. And I'm just going to use the cutout of the stock for the bench to mark it. I'm not even going to pull measurements. I'm just going to throw the slab piece on there and mark that 2-inch board. Now, I'm marking that 2-inch board, not the perfect size of that triangle. You can see right here, I've got the piece backed off of the foam a little bit. That's because I want this to be a little shorter than that miter right there, because I need space for thin set to go in there. So I don't want this foam the exact size of this. Now, this jig, I built this specifically for this task. Every one of these benches I build the exact same size because I'm using that slab size as a default. So I just built it specifically for this. I built this out of just standard, I think either 1x4 primed pine or 1x6 primed pine. Just established my angles, put some kickers on there, added some structure to the outside with these, but also allowed some slots in here for the clamp for assembly, because I wanted to build this jig to where it would be able to be utilized for assembly and finish. So I wanted to be able to assemble the unit in the jig, and I wanted to also be able to use it to hold it in place while I do the finishing. Once I get my 2 slabs cut, I'll place them together in the jig, and this is where I'm going to be able to measure for my end piece right here. Now you see I was using the IQ 228 on that. That's great for ripping. You can't do any miters or anything on it, but it works great for ripping straight stock. I like it because it's dust free. And with that, you know, it's not good for ripping long stock like that unless you use that table that you can get for it. Now, I got my width cut. Now I'm just going to cut the ends off straight, and I'm going to outside miter them as well as the long sides. Again, back cut them more than 45. Just a quick little test fit here, and you can see how it works out. Now, let me back that up just a hair. You see right here, you can see, man, that's super clean, right? Well, that's the factory edge on this piece. This is the factory edge of it. So I've got that natural bevel that's there already. So that gives you a perfect straight line. This side of that doesn't look as clean. It just doesn't, and it's not going. Don't beat yourself up if it's not perfect looking, because as long as it's straight, once you color match, epoxy it and polish it, you won't be able to tell. But I do always make this side the top side of my bench. So when I install it, that's what you see, because you're not going to see the underside of it. This side right here, you're not going to see that. So I make this my top side. That way it looks good. So I install it with thin set. I just burn a coat into the stone itself, and then I'll comb the 2-inch board. Again, assemble it in the jig. That's the way to do it. It makes life a lot easier. I'm using a 1/4x1/4 square notch because you don't need too much. Now you can see these clamps that I'm using. Once you get them on there, that allows you to squeeze them and kind of keep it even. But more importantly, what those top clamps are doing are, when I put my top in place there, I can do micro adjustments on both sides to get those miters perfectly tight, and your end result will be a lot better if you're using these clamps like this for micro adjustments, because if you don't, you're fighting it. You're going to be fighting it, and you're going to be trying to tape it and hold it in place. It really ends up being a pain. See those micro adjustments? Just kind of fine tuning it right through there. And so that's the initial construction. Now we're ready to thin set that end cap piece in, but this is where you're going to color match your epoxy, and you're doing epoxy and thin set at the same time. So I'll show you that in the next video.